in the morning. Jimmy Lakey on the radio. I got my coffee and cream. Jimmy's on the air. Wake up and start your day. Now go and tell all the neighbors, yeah. Then crank up the radio. There's infotainment, brilliance to get you on your way. Wake up and start your day with Jimmy Lakey.
Well, woo to you too as well. Nice to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the first day of May. We made it here. Anybody remember we first started this little streamcast a couple of months ago? We're test week. We didn't really launch fully until like January, so we're 4 or 5 months in now. But like December the 30th or so, we were broadcasting, testing out the technology from Africa. So like a couple of test shows in December. Anyway, welcome to the program. We made it to May together, and they said it wouldn't last. You know, the last time I had a gig like that was radio when I got hired by the most recent station that I was on. And I couldn't believe that they wanted me to go, and I didn't want to go. And then I said, okay, I'll take the job. I took the job. And I said, they said it wouldn't last. And 10 years later, over 10 years later, I was behind that microphone. So anyway, 5 months later, producer Chad and I are still gluttons for punishment and sacrificing so much so that we can bring you this news and entertainment. Infotainment is what we call it. And one day, the good Lord is going to bless it big, and we're going to be real happy. We got a lot of good sponsors that have supported us out of the get-go, but 5 months in, good morning to all of you. How are you doing? Already May the 1st, first day of May, year of our Lord 2025. A lot of news stories I want to get to today, and I will cover them accordingly. And also, Sal Litvak's going to be on the program. He's written a fantastic little new book. It's called Let My People Laugh. It's the greatest Jewish jokes of all time. So all of you people in the tribe out there listening, we got great Jewish jokes by Salvador Litvak coming up. But he's also going to talk about the anti-Semitism in these Ivy League schools, and really the anti-Semitism that's endorsed by or not condemned by the modern-day Democrat Party. Harvard comes to mind, Columbia University, and all of the indoctrination that goes on there. So Salvador Litvak comes up with me at 8:30 this morning in the Mountain Time Zone. That's going to be about 10:30 in the Eastern Time Zone, and you can do the math on the other time zone. So that's coming up, Sal Litvak. And then our aviation and travel expert, Jay Ratliff, is always on the show on a Thursday. Good Lord willing, we will connect with him at about 9 o'clock this morning, Mountain Time, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, and talk about aviation and travel. And, of course, you are getting to participate in the program as well. That's how kind and nice we are. That not just you get to listen, but we want to actually hear from you. At least most of you. We want to hear from you. And here's how you can participate in the show. You and all the platforms are out there. Check in, sound off, say hello. Heidi Ho, neighbors. We broadcast live this morning on the first day of May, year of our Lord 2025. And here's what you do. You need to actually make comments in the live show. Make comments. They actually appear in real time into our studio. So all of you on YouTube this morning, we want to hear from some YouTube comments, and we also want to hear from some Rumble comments as well. If you're on Instagram, we'll try to check those. So it's a glorious day the Lord has made. We are together, and I'm glad to have you here on the program with us. It's called Lakey Unleashed. Somebody said, why is it called Lakey Unleashed? It's called Unleashed because I've been unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. And here we do this show together, and I appreciate it. So looking forward to all your comments popping up. And again, wherever you're at, Facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page, Facebook.com/Red Wave America, Facebook.com/The Media Equalizer. You log in there, say hi, and we see those, and make a snarky comment if you wish. Feel free to do so. All right, I've got a story I'll come back to in just a minute. I'm not going to lead with it. It's called Colorado Doubles Down on Stupid. Colorado has endorsed boys, biological boys. That means someone that is born with the berry and the twigs. Twig, usually just one twig, right? You got the twig and the berries. You can still go bust a girl's face in girls' sports. Colorado has doubled down on stupid. We're going to come back to that story. And but I want to come to the story that I found fascinating yesterday. There was a cabinet meeting. Anybody follow this cabinet meeting that happened at the White House? Remember in Joe Biden's poopy pants administration, you had Dr. Jill Biden sitting at the head of the table leading the cabinet meeting because Joe was out changing his Depends or something. I don't know what he was doing. But like once every 2 or 3 weeks now, once a month since this administration started, they have a cabinet meeting, a real live cabinet meeting. And they all sit around the big table, and the staff is there, the cabinet's all there, and they bring the press in and do part of the cabinet meeting as a press. And then I'm sure they do some behind the closed door sessions. And so I'm watching this thing, and Donald Trump is handing out gift hats for everybody celebrating 100 days, and there were versions of Gulf of America, but it looked like the Make America Great Again red hat or black hat. It was great. It's great optics, and you see what a competent team around the table. And President Trump asked them to all go around and celebrate what they think their greatest accomplishment was in the first 100 days. And they all talked about what they think their accomplishment was and where they're going. And it was really, I found it quite enjoyable to watch. But something was said that didn't get a lot of news coverage. Did anybody else see this? They went to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and one of the things that he said was something about child trafficking and sex slavery. Health and Human Services, and I'm thinking he's going to talk about red dye number 5. I'm thinking he's going to talk about autism. Maybe he's going to talk about the vaccine schedule. But no, anybody watched the story, and I find reports that he said it, but nobody's really digging in to say, wait, what do you mean by this? Let me read part of the narrative. This is a written news story by Elizabeth Weibel. You can just Google RFK HHS collaborator in child trafficking for Biden. And let me read the story. If you missed this, I think this is the breaking news of the cabinet. But the people focus on the funny hats, and Elon Musk stacked a black one on a red one on a black one. He had 2 hats. He said, "Well, I wear multiple hats anyway." So it was they focused on this stuff that I'm like, wait. That's one of the big stories out there. If you missed it, you probably did, unless you're a junkie like I am. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. claimed that under former President Joe Biden's administration, they had been a collaborator in child trafficking, sex, and slavery. During a Trump administration cabinet meeting on Wednesday, Kennedy thanked President Donald Trump for his quote, extraordinary leadership over the past 100 days of this administration. Kennedy highlighted how HHS and the Food and Drug Administration had announced that petroleum-based synthetic food dyes would be phased out of the United States food supply. So that's a good announcement. You expect that one, right? He said, quote, "Thank you for your extraordinary leadership over the past 100 days. We are already making America healthy again. We announced last week the ban of the 9 petroleum-based synthetic dyes, food dyes, that within 2 months, we're going to ban the worst of them. I'm working with Secretary Rollins on dietary guidelines. The dietary guidelines that the Trump Biden administration gave us 453 pages are basically unreadable." He said, we've got to fix this stuff. It's incompetence from the Biden administration. Kennedy then continued to note that he was also working with the Department of Agriculture on the SNAP program to remove sodas and candy from the program, and in the EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin to change the federal fluoride regulations. So all these things. Okay, he's ticking them off. And I'm like, okay, go Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And then I want you to hear what he said next. Because you expect the red dyes, you expect the fluoride schedule, you expect all this stuff, right? Listen to this. This is a quote from the cabinet meeting yesterday. And I tried to pull the video, and I couldn't get a proper version of it. He says, "We have ended HHS as the vector, the principal vector in this country for child trafficking," end quote. I resume the quote, "During the Biden administration, HHS became a collaborator in child trafficking and for sex and for slavery, and we have ended that, and we are very aggressively going out and trying to find these children, 300,000 children that were lost by the Biden administration." Now, I want to hold your horses here. We know that there were a lot of kids separated from their parents. They got sent up across the border with notes and said, "Hey, deliver me to Aunt Jemima," or whoever it is. And so there are a lot of kids that are out there, 300,000 kids. They don't know where they're at. The Biden administration. That's true. It's an undercovered story, but it's actually true. There are 300,000 kids. But this is the first you heard that the HHS, Health and Human Services, were actually a vector for child trafficking, child sex, and slavery. Don't you think somebody ought to go, could you explain that, please? I mean, you're saying what? The Biden administration was a vector for this? If he just would have said, "Hey, we're trying to find those 300,000 kids," and doggone it. And first of all, you're like, isn't that Department of Homeland Security? Why is that Health and Human Services? It really is. I had to back it up. I had the little remote going, what the hell did he just say? And I'm backing it up. If anybody's followed up on this story, let me know if you have any further information on this. I think it was phenomenal, and it was actually frightening that he said that he said this. He said that the government has been, under Biden, HHS has been a vector for child sex trafficking and slavery, and we've ended that. And you're like, well, if that's true, are arrests being made? Is there investigation going on? Is the FBI involved? It just kind of threw it out there, and oh yeah, the red dice are going away. If anybody has any news on this, I'm going to dig on this. In November of 2024, Breitbart, John Binder reported that HHS whistleblower claimed that the administration had created a white glove delivery service in which the Department of Homeland Security took custody of unaccompanied alien children at the U.S. border and then would hand them over to the HHS. And during that testimony before two subcommittees of the House Homeland Security, Terry Lee Rodas detailed the process by which DHS would take kids and give them over to HHS, and then they would place them with adult sponsors in the USA. And the whistleblower, Terry Lee Rodas, noted that the children were preparing to work grueling overnight shifts in slaughterhouses, children in factories. Some children may die today in jobs they don't. So evidently, under Biden, the unaccompanied minors, we got to get them out of sight. So they were handing them over to HHS, and HHS was putting them to work in slaughterhouses and God knows what else. It's a really interesting story, and it was just kind of a drive-by comment by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And if anybody did any follow-up on that, I have not found it yet, but I'm going to figure this out because it seems as if somebody ought to be perp-walked and go to jail on this one, if that's the case. But the Biden administration complicit in sex trafficking. That was what was said yesterday under the HHS, and there's a whistleblower that testified last year before Biden left office accordingly in Congress. So if anybody missed that, it's a news story that I'm thinking, how did we miss that news story, and why is that not top news? Now, I have another story for you that I think you might want to pay attention to in the world of where's this coverage of this story. Anybody know we're on the brink of nuclear war? No, I'm not talking about U.S. and Russia. I'm not talking about Ukraine or China. I'm talking about an ongoing battle that's happening between two arch rivals, nemesis, India and Pakistan. Both countries have nuclear weapons, and they're on the brink of a war after an attack in the Kashmir region. This ought to be a very, very big news story. But again, you get that jackass, Terry Moran in the White House on the 100th day from ABC, interviewing President Trump about the 100 days. And he didn't ask about India and Pakistan. He asked about whether or not are you still mean tweeting? Are you still a mean tweeter? Don't you think you should tone your rhetoric down? Listen, jackass, we're on the brink of nuclear war with India and Pakistan, and the U.S. news media has too much Trump derangement syndrome to actually report to you what's happening at the end of the day. I'll throw a quiz out there for many of you. Many of you that just maybe you watch this show and you get news like this, but how many of you were watching the evening news last night or watching your shows or watching your pictures or whatever you did, scanning through the heard and how many of you have heard any reporting, massive or detailed or even small reporting, on the potential battle between India and Pakistan? I can't think of a physical news story I've seen on it. And I do consume a lot of news. Now, I screen a lot of it and filter in a lot of guest interviews, but I haven't seen a lot of stories of it. And other than me actually physically watching the cabinet meeting and what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said, I haven't seen a lot of news stories go viral about what he said about HHS under Biden. These are two stories I bring to your attention, but follow the India and Pakistan fight on April the 22nd, which was about a week or so ago in the disputed region of Kashmir, which India and Pakistan both think they have. There was a spark that could ignite a brand new conflict, and they're fighting again. A big attack happened there. At least 24 people were killed by a gunman who opened fire on a group of domestic tourists visiting the popular beauty spot in that area, and the Indian administered area of Kashmir, but the Pakistanis think they own it as well. The attack took place in the picturesque town in the Himalayas, often described as the Switzerland of India. And some guy gunned down a couple of people over there, and it's raised conflicts between the Pakistanis and the Indians. And both of these people are talking very, very violently with each other, and both of them have nuclear weapons. And it seems like this could be another big story that the media covers. But I think Terry Moran from ABC News, when he had access to the president, he didn't pursue any of that kind of questioning about what can happen here, because India is a great ally. We're about to do a big trade deal with them. And then you got Pakistan over there as well. So that's two big stories in a row that I would bet that if I'm a betting man, which sometimes I am, I would bet that many of you have not seen either of these two news stories out there on the child trafficking, sex slavery as a vector that the U.S. government was participatory in, and also the story about the Kashmir and India battle that's forthcoming. All right, I'm going to do something for you real special. One of the other things that happened in the cabinet meeting yesterday was Elon Musk was there, and President Trump said, I know you're looking forward to go back to your car company and work on the cars and rockets, but you're welcome to stay around here as long as you want. He's at the cabinet meeting. They gave him a round of applause. He had on two hats. He's a funny fella. He's a quirky little fella, but he's on the spectrum in a very brilliant way. Well, last week we announced that this show has not just gone streamcasting, but as soon as the show's over, they all get loaded up to a podcast device. Spotify, iHeartMedia, all of them, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, etc. So some of you are only listening to the audio of this stuff. Well, since the months we started this show, I have done dozens of interviews behind a paywall that no longer exist, and we're transferring those out to our new streamcasters. So just look up Jimmy Unleashed on the podcast device. And not only can you hear this show in history and archives and download it every day if you miss the live stream, but you can also catch any of the interviews that I have done or am going to do. They will always be loaded up for free on Jimmy Lakey Unleashed. So go to your favorite podcast player, look up Jimmy Lakey Unleashed, and you will see this show, and you will see all the daily shows, and you'll see a lot of interviews. Now, we've still got a lot of interviews to move over there. We're moving them over there one at a time. We're moving them over there one at a time, but I appreciate you listening to them. This is one of the interviews we put up a couple of weeks ago, and it's about Elon Musk, brother Elon. It's Dennis Neal, who you might recognize his face from CNN, or maybe you recognize his face from CNBC. He was a CNBC business guy. And he's also been with the Fox News company, Fox Business. He's no longer on, but this is an interview I did with him. He's written an entire book about Elon Musk, and this is just a fascinating tease so that you can actually, you ready for this? I want you to actually go get a copy of the book, and I think you'll understand the thought process of Elon Musk ever better. So this is just a small snippet of an almost 1 hour interview that I did with Dennis Neal, formerly with CNBC and Fox Business, talking about Elon Musk and his new book. Let's roll that because it's out there live on all the podcast platforms, and you can go find it and listen to it for absolutely free. Go ahead, roll the tape.
Maybe 2026 year end or so, there are these windows when you slingshot to Mars far faster. It's the only time you can make a flight there, that he'll put an Optimist robot. This is this life-size 4 fingers and a thumb robot on Mars. Now that would just be incredible, wouldn't it?
Wow, that's fascinating. I was not aware that the X.com, because I wonder why you changed it to X. What's that about? I wasn't aware of the backstory that this has always been 20 years, been the dream of his to have this kind of one-stop shop all platform. I did not know the history of X.com.
Yeah, and he never lost sight of that vision. It was always there. And I love that kind of dedication because this Mars thing, he's been pursuing that for 20 years. But here's the thing. When you set this huge dream that's impossible to attain, the media later will say, hey, he fell short of his goals. But you will get 2 or 3 times as far as you ever would have gotten had you set a more reasonable goal. And this can apply to us in our own lives, too. I think we should dream bigger. And one reason is because he's willing to fail. He's willing to fall short. And he shares that trait with Trump. You know, Trump always overpromises, always falls short of his promise. And yet he gets so much farther than anyone else in Washington would get when they're afraid of being seen as failing, you know?
Yeah. You talk about leadership, you read leadership books, you go to leadership conferences. Is the leadership that we see that in the dream and the visionary that Elon is, was he inspired by anyone? Did he read a John Maxwell book at some point? Did he go to a Tony Robbins seminar? I mean, where did it come from?
You know, I don't have a good answer to that question, Jimmy, but since I'm a longtime journalist, let me go ahead and make one up. I mean, he did have a couple of electrical and engineering professors that were mentors, and he read everything. And certainly, I'm sure he developed an ideology from that. You know, Walter Isaacson, the best biographer of our age, right? He's done Einstein, he did Steve Jobs, and then he wrote that tome, 688 pages, I think it was, called Elon Musk. He'd know a lot more about that than I do. But, he certainly doesn't spend a whole lot of time talking about anyone else. He's got a vision and he's pursuing it. And of course, he is rather incredibly brilliant, in so many different fields, right? Most of these guys are good at one main thing. Jobs was good at one thing, that consumer electronics space. Okay. Bezos, incredible job building Amazon into the world.
Usually, we say he's good at one thing, and he is, but he's also good. I mean, he's such an eclectic guy. He's the scientific mind. He's the business mind. He's the playboy. He's had lots of baby mamas out there. I mean,
usually that's crazy right there.
Yeah, you usually pigeonhole into, okay, he's the nerdy guy, he can't get the girls. He's the business tycoon, he can get the girls. And here Elon's he's like, it's like this. It's like every stereotype of the world and got together, made a baby, and it's Elon Musk.
He's got Edison, Einstein, Jobs, and P.T. Barnum going on. He's a mixed martial artist deploying those four elements, right? I mean, the guy's really something, and it makes him really fun to watch. Now, all along, I wondered, though, what is it? Why is he so willing to take on huge risk that others never would, and dream huge in things that others didn't even dare try? And the opening lesson of my book might explain it. And lesson 1 says, all of this may be fake, so just go for it. Elon believes the chances may be billions to 1 in favor of the idea that we are living right now inside a video simulation that is so advanced, it could be thousands of years from now, that it's indistinguishable from reality, and we just don't even know it. And the more I started looking into this, the more I got goosebumps at the incredible, possibility of this. Now, let's put aside, and I even interviewed a physicist who thinks he's found evidence that this is so, that it's true. And it's rather fascinating. And I put him on my podcast, as a matter of fact. But here's the thing, never mind whether it's true. If you think there's a chance it may be, it frees you up to take bigger risk, to live louder, to love harder and more out loud, to take that new job that ordinarily you might turn it down because, oh gosh, it's just too much of a risk. Because what the heck, it all may be a game. And it ties into lesson 11, where Elon says, in life, the most likely outcome often is the most ironic one, the most opposite of what you expected to happen. And it's the most entertaining outcome. Well, that would be because the organizers of this massive video simulation, they're not going to do it to have boring outcomes. They're going to do it to have the most entertaining outcomes possible. So maybe in your own life, you should err on the more entertaining outcome.
I had not heard that. I can't wait to get to that part of the book where you or the podcast where you interview this guy. That it's just fascinating.
I'm going to jump in here. We're going to pause. We're going to pause it. You get the idea of this interview. That was behind a paywall for a while, but now Dennis Neal, that interview is up there. That interview is up there for you to peruse, listen to for free. Some of you that were subscribers on the Patreon, of course, you got to listen to it when it released. But again, the Patreon page has been shadowed down, and there is no more subscription. All of these interviews that you were missing out on, either because Bidenomics had hit you, or you didn't want to support the show, or you just didn't have the money, or whatever the case may be, they're all free now, and I hope you'll go listen to them. Because some people say, well, can I get a free link? But these are my buddies that are usually pretty cheap. So, no, now you can go work your little butt over there and go to the iHeartRadio app or the Spotify app or the Apple Podcast and look up Jimmy Lakey Unleashed and like and follow it and help us grow that. But all these interviews are free, and that Dennis Neal one was fascinating. That's the perspective that Elon Musk has of the world around him. All right, I got 2 stories I'm throwing out there, and 2 unreported stories that I hope that will become circulating and reporting. Is that we have great drama going on between India and Pakistan, the brink of a nuclear war, some people say. You also have this bomb that got dropped yesterday at the cabinet meeting, where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. dropped a bomb and said, hey, under Joe Biden's Health and Human Services, the Department of Homeland Security was pretty much handing over unaccompanied children to HHS, and HHS were sending them to sponsored homes, and now we can't find 300,000 kids. And he called it, they were the vector that was participating in child trafficking, sex, and slavery. There's no other way to read that except what the whistleblower said in 2024, that was a chain of custody of the unaccompanied children. And when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says now we're looking for these 300,000 kids, that means the Biden administration, according to the whistleblower, and now Robert F. Kennedy Jr. seemingly corroborating that, they grabbed the kids, unaccompanied minors, at the border. They handed them over to HHS. HHS had families that they were willing to hand the kids over to, and nobody's seen them since. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the Biden administration using HHS was a vector for child trafficking, slavery, and child sex workers. How is that not the freaking lead story of the day? It's unbelievable. He just said it so casually in the cabinet meeting. I had to rewind it and watch it again. It is a fascinating story, and it needs to get some traction out there. On a couple of more stories I want to get to is Colorado. Many of you know I live in the state of Colorado, did radio in Colorado, talk radio from Colorado for 20-something years, off and on. Colorado has doubled down on stupid. This is CHASA, the Colorado High School Activities and Sports Association. Sherry Pfeiffer, friend at CompleteColorado.com, says officials from the Colorado High School Activities Association, CHASA, CHSSAA, have responded to a letter signed by nearly 80 school district administrators calling on the athletics organizing authority to come into compliance with recent Trump administration order around biological boys competing in girl sports. So you have leading administrators in 80 school districts in the state of Colorado that send CHASA a letter and say, hey, let's knock this nonsense off. Let's fall in line with what the Trump administration has put out there, that we should not have biological boys, that's boys with the twig and berries, we should not have them playing against biological girls in sports. CHASA's bylaws currently allow for transgender students to participate in these activities, including sports, and they can do it, quote, from the bylaws, free from unlawful discrimination based on sexual orientation. The letter actually said CHASA must immediately adopt rules and practices to ensure that boys are not permitted to compete as girls in girls' sports. The letter was dated April the 14th. It also says, quote, this action is not only a matter of safety and fairness for our female athletes, but also aligns with the recent federal directives that reinforce the protection of women under Title IX. CHASA's response was clear that this is not going to happen. CHASA says, screw you. The CHASA commissioner, a guy named Michael Kruger, and no relation to Freddie that we know of, said school communities throughout Colorado hold a broad range of views on this matter. And while your letter exposes one viewpoint, you 80 school districts out there, we also recognize diversity of equality. Passionate perspectives exist among our member schools and communities. We believe all school leaders should be afforded the respect to act in accordance with their perspective and values while honoring the legal obligations that are governing the institution. So basically, the CHASA guy says, we appreciate your opinion, but we don't care. If you have a boy that's a biological boy who wants to slam a volleyball in the face of a biological girl, tell the girl to suck it up, buttercup. It's okay. Because the CHASA king has come and made a proclamation. This is doubling down on stupid, and I hope to goodness with the recent orders from President Donald J. Trump and the feckless leadership then of our Governor Jared Polis, what a fraud and a fake he is. I hope that Jared Polis can step in here and tell CHASA to have some common sense here. And then I also hope that the White House and the administration looks and say every dime and dollar that is going to the state of Colorado should be paused on hold if possible, because you're violating the rights of young ladies. You're putting them in harm's way. You're encouraging some kind of a violence against girls, and these Democrats and the CHASA board should all be damned ashamed of themselves. Good for the 80 school districts across Colorado saying, hey, we got to get the biological boys out of sports. Shame on Jared Polis and the CHASA organization, the Colorado Department of Education, and all those jackasses that are screwing up education in the state. Shame on them for putting girls in harm's way. So keep a sharp eye on that. And again, we focus a lot on big national issues, but, you know, I'm based in Colorado. And if you think that California is crazy, wait till you meet our Governor, Jared Polis. He's just an ugly version of Gavin Newsom. Not as personable either. Nothing personal on my part. I'm sure he's a very kind. They're all God's children. That's all I can say. And thank God they're not mine. All right. Good to have all of you here on the program. Jimmy is my name. Lakey Unleashed. Don't forget, if you'd like us to brag about your business sometime, we'd love to do so. Be one of our great sponsors. info@jimmylakey.com. 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 And now, since we've added this as a podcast as well, so not only do you get to watch it live, But if we brag about your business, thousands of people will listen to it again throughout the week on the podcast version, and your business gets the word spread out there. So reach out to us. I'd love to brag about your business. It doesn't have to be full. We've got a lot of packages, a lot of opportunities to help you, even if it's just a name dropping here and there. I'm happy to do that as well, and it's a great way to support us. info@jimmylakey.com. How's everybody doing? Everybody's good? Everybody's happy? Yeah. I just saw a message pop up on my little screen over here. You really don't like Governor Polis, do you? Well, do you? There's nothing to like about this man. He has destroyed and taken this down the primrose path of destruction. And the fact that his feckless leadership, he would probably say, well, the boys probably shouldn't play in the girls' sports, but CHSA, that's a separate deal. No, it's not a separate deal. The Colorado Department of Education, the school districts have an agreement with CHSA, which is a separate organization, and they need to step in and tell this jackass that runs the company, the organization of CHSA, that there was already talk a couple of years ago, school districts moving away from CHSA and forming another athletic association. I think that'd be a good idea. If you're a school principal or if you're a school superintendent or school board member, you should start that exploration immediately and tell CHSA to go pound sand, and Michael Kruger, no relation to Freddie, that he can kiss your grits. That's what you should tell him, because especially if you're a parent of a girl athlete and they're going to let that boy slap the volleyball down on her face, shame on CHSA. Shame on CHSA, and shame on Jared Polis for putting up with it in the state of Colorado. Let's change topics, shall we? I think we shall, because my program is called Lakey Unleashed, and I have been unleashed from the confines of corporate radio, and we talk about whatever the heck I want to talk about, except now we're going to talk about what Salvador Litvak wants to talk about. And actually, we're going to talk about what he wants to talk about, because I also want to talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome a filmmaker, author, film director, author of the book called Let My People Laugh, Greatest Jewish Jokes of All Time, and the director of an upcoming action film, Guns and Moses. Ladies and gentlemen, Salvador Litvak onto the stage. Sal, good morning, sir. How are you?
Jimmy, great to be with you.
Pleasure to have you. First of all, Jewish jokes. I will get some serious news stories and anti-Semitism happening around the world here, and especially in America. But what are some good what makes a Jewish joke? Is it just about Jewish people? Do we have to know do we have to know Hebrew? Explain Jewish jokes to us.
It's just been part of our tradition for 3,000 years. Probably the oldest known joke is in the Bible, Exodus 14:11. Right, we're coming out of Egypt with great signs and wonders. But now our back is against the sea, and Pharaoh's army, the most powerful army in the world, is chasing us down. And the leaders turn to Moses and say, because there were no graves in Egypt, you had to bring us out here to die in the desert. You can hear that Brooklyn sarcasm 3,000 years later. But in dark times, and we've known many, we remember how to laugh.
So this is a book that is it a book of jokes? Is it a book of is it just kind of the history of the Jewish humor? What kind of explain what they find in the book?
It's literally the greatest Jewish jokes of all time, and it's a great resource. The jokes are all numbered, and there's lists at the front when you need a great joke for a fundraising speech, for a date, for a lunch, for a golf outing. Best jokes for that situation.
Now, let me ask you, I'm a Protestant, okay? Am I allowed to tell Jewish jokes? Because I know you got to be careful. You can't tell, a black guy can tell a black joke, or a Mexican guy can tell a Mexican joke. But if I do that, I'm in trouble. Can I tell Jewish jokes?
Well, first of all, we do laugh at ourselves all the time. And we can tell it's all a matter of nuance. Are you saying it because you're our friend, or are you saying it because you want to knock us down? And everyone can tell what time it is.
There's a lot of people out there that are trying to knock down Israel, knock down the Jewish faith. These Ivy League schools have become quite ridiculous in what they're allowing. Just a video this week that came out of a Jewish guy with a yarmulke on trying to just walk through. They blocked him. And Harvard said, oh, that's not good. We'll try to fix that. It's been weeks, it's been months, it's been a year since these anti-Semitic protests, anti-Jew protests have broken out on these Ivy League schools, and they keep saying they're going to fix it. They keep changing administrators in some cases. What are we watching here? This is crazy.
Well, I mean, now the task force that Harvard appointed has handed in its report, which Harvard released, and Harvard has admitted strongly that they have an anti-Semitism problem. It's systemic. They're teaching people in these classes to hate Jews, to hate Israel. If you're white, you're an oppressor. If you're a Jewish white person, you're a max oppressor. And they can say or do whatever they want. And they're making people very uncomfortable. They're intimidating people. And as you said, they're even physically assaulting people.
You mentioned the report that Harvard has released. This is not you. This is not me. This is not the Donald Trump trying to hold billions of dollars back from their finances. According to their own report, quote, Jewish students were advised to refrain from sharing Holocaust family stories if it involved Jews finding refuge in Israel. Being Jewish or Israeli was considered offensive. Your very existence is, quote, a problem on campus. Students had to denounce Israel to be accepted. Harvard faculty let students refuse to work with Israelis. I mean, this is Harvard's own report. And what's going to happen to this report? The action going to be taken?
I mean, I don't see how they could avoid taking action. But on the other hand, what the Trump administration has asked them to do in order to secure that $2.2 billion in funding is basically addressing these kinds of issues, and they're going to court to fight it. It's really a tough time. This is something I used to not talk about because it would sound snotty. But now that it's a badge of shame, I will tell you I went to Harvard. And in the 80s, it was a wonderful place. I had an amazing experience. I was an athlete. I was on the rowing team. I never encountered anti-Semitism or this kind of stuff. And somehow over these decades, and I think we could follow the money to figure out why, these certain kinds of studies departments have become absolutely infected with the woke virus, which includes the mantra, Israel bad, Jews bad, and you could say anything you want about them, and that's okay. It's terrible.
This may be, we may need psychotherapy and historians to really dive into this fully, but you have to ask how it is in the world of academia that these anti-Semitic people, these professors get there because they're the ones with the knowledge. They know what history can repeat itself. They're the ones that should be the most aware and the most alert to what this kind of discrimination and hatred could do. And yet they're the ones perpetrating it. They're the ones selling it. How did we get to that point, Sal?
Listen, I don't have to tell you, Jimmy, about the horrors of DEI and intersectionality. And rabid progressivism that just says, depending on how many victim categories you fall into, that's your status in society. Never mind merit, never mind your accomplishments, and never mind history. So they've got this, they've reduced the entire Middle East history and conflict to white people are oppressing brown people. Never mind that many Israelis are brown people. Never mind that Israel is clearly the underdog, a tiny sliver of a country in a vast, geomass that includes curvature of the earth and 500 million people. And these so-called Palestinians, which is a made-up identity, there's no place for them. I mean, if they move 10 miles away, there's no problem. But they consider it a stain on their honor that Israel exists. And then all these willing accomplices or useful idiots here in America just take up the cause for them. And they must be laughing like crazy that they've got allies that have totally invaded academia, media, and it used to be the halls of government. Thank God there's a little bit of a waking up going on there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Ivy League, because you think of it now, it's tarnished enough. If you're a parent, especially whether you're a lot of money or a little bit of money, it seems as if you'd be kind of going, maybe I don't want to send my kid there. I mean, I'd like him to go to Harvard, but look at all the hell that's happening on the campus, especially if you're a Jewish family. Does this tarnish the Ivy League, or does that matter to the Ivy League? Do they care that they're looking like some bigots there?
I think that they've got to care that their reputation is taking such a hit. I mean, a classmate of mine actually has sued the university because they've reduced the value of the degree. People spend a fortune. They go into debt for the rest of their lives to get that degree. And now that it's, in so many areas of the world, a badge of shame, what do we invest in? What is the point? We certainly learned a lot. We made a lot of good connections. And I think you can still get a good education there for sure, but you have to seek it out. I think there's still a lot of good research being done there, but there's also a lot of research that's being, sold down the river to pursue an agenda that has nothing to do with the research. And hopefully now the pendulum starts to swing back.
We shall see. We shall see. And it's going to be interesting. If you're just listening to the program, because I know some of you don't watch the live stream, you listen to the podcast. It pops up here right as soon as the show's done. You listen to the voice of Salvador Litvak, film director, author of Let My People Laugh, greatest Jewish jokes of all time, and also the director of an upcoming action film. It's called Guns and Moses. We can talk about that here in just a moment as well. But before we do this, you have this... you're a comedian, you're a filmmaker. Are you normally a commentator on things cultural or political, or is this just hitting too close to home because of the Harvard tie? What kind of causes you to want to venture down this path of discussion that for the DEI crowd probably puts you out there persona non grata?
I'm waiting to get that phone call. I'm not a comedian. I just tell jokes. I'm also an influencer. You got it up on the screen there, Accidental Talmudist. And my wife and I run this platform where we share authentic Jewish wisdom, culture, humor, and 3,000 years of accumulated wisdom with a large online audience. And that's a real passion project. It's something that we care about very much. We're Orthodox Jews. We're always learning. The Talmud is the oral tradition within Judaism. I have 1 million followers on Facebook, and probably half of them, or more than half, are not Jewish. And they're very interested in an unbroken wisdom tradition stretching all the way back to Mount Sinai. Primarily a film director, and our new movie, Guns and Moses, is coming out. It does have a Jewish topic for sure. It's about a beloved rabbi in a small high desert town who's forced to become a gunfighter after his community is violently attacked. It's an action thriller, but it was inspired by a shooting in Poway, California, where a shooting happened in a Chabad synagogue. But because I teach every day online, I teach a Talmud class, I do a lot of public speaking, I'm comfortable in front of a camera. And when the book tour started, people started saying, "Oh, you're not the typical Ivy League Jewish guy who moves in lockstep politically with the New York Times." Quite the contrary. And maybe you'll appreciate this story, Jimmy. I was in Jerusalem in 2014. And that I did grow up in New York, and I did believe the New York Times for most of my life. But on that day, there was a horrific attack in a synagogue where 2 terrorists with hatchets came in during morning prayers and murdered 4 American Jewish rabbis who were in Jerusalem with the hatchets. An Arab Israeli Druze policeman came in off duty and attacked the terrorists, ended up dying in order to save the rest of the congregants. And then another off-duty policeman came in and ended it. Terrible, terrible tragedy. I've met members of the family of those who were murdered that day. But within an hour and a half of the event, the BBC was running a headline. This was early in the morning in Europe. Was running a headline, Israeli security forces killed 2 Palestinians. And a few hours later, CNN picked it up with similar type of slant. At which point I said, wow, whatever I thought the news was, it's so false. The manipulation, the bias is so strong. And the New York Times, of course, echoes that. And then I thought, well, if that's what they're lying to me about, in terms of Israel, is that the only thing that they're lying to me about? And that's when I started realizing that if you want to know what's going on in the world, you have to get multiple news sources, triangulate the truth, and understand that the media is making money by keeping us furious and terrified. And you're not going to get the facts unless you dig in and figure them out for yourself by, again, multiple news sources.
Someone posted on our YouTube feed this morning. It posted over the screen a moment ago. You might not have seen it. Jimmy, Guns and Moses sounds like the name of a Jewish hard rock band. It could be that.
Yeah, it's about Rabbi Moses Zaltzman, Rabbi Mo. But I'll tell you that the training in the movie, the firearms training, is very authentic. People in the firearms community appreciate it. A number of years ago, as an Orthodox Jew, I walk around in a kippah in my neighborhood. The guys are wearing black jackets, beards, hats. We're the visible Jews. And the threat level against Jews has been mounting for some time now, even before October 7th. And so I joined an organization that trains and licenses us. We're volunteers, but we're licensed security guards. We also have concealed carry permits. And we carry firearms in our neighborhood and in synagogue because you never know.
Yeah.
And never again means we're not going to be a soft target.
Let's hope that something swings in the pendulum of American culture and, I focus globally, but just in America here, this anti-Semitism that's evident on these campuses needs to stop. And heads need to roll figuratively as far as administration jobs, professors, seasoned, tenured, or whatever. They need to go, and sanity here needs to be restored. Salvador Litvak, if someone wants to, first of all, get a copy of the book, I know it's on Amazon. We put up your Twitter feed or X feed just a moment ago. They can follow you there, Accidental Talmudist. And also, if folks want to watch this movie that's coming up, when's that going to hit?
It's coming to theaters across America this summer. We're super excited. The teaser's about to drop. Trailer's going to be a few weeks after that. But you can see it in a theater near you. The movie stars Mark Feuerstein, the great Neil McDonough, Alona Tal, Dermot Mulroney, and the legendary Christopher Lloyd. People are going to enjoy it.
Oh, wow. Christopher Lloyd. Salvador Litvak, I appreciate you hopping on here. Let's do it again sometime. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much for stepping into the house of Lakey and Lee. Salvador Litvak, Accidental Talmudist. You can see the X feed on the screen there, and the book is out there as well. And let me refresh you on the name of the book as well, just so you go pick it up. It's a joke book. Remember the joke books? I remember I used to buy, what was it, Weekly Reader, I think we had as a kid, and you take the little form and you check it off, hand it to your teacher, and you spend a couple of books, and a couple of weeks later, Scholastic something would show up. These books would show up, and the books would show up, and you'd have new books, and I would always order joke books. And so I remember going home from like third grade, little Jimmy said, holding court with my parents, reading, "What is green and has four doors?" I remember this joke. And they said, "Little Jimmy, what is green and has four doors?" I said, "A 4-door pickle." It was a pickle joke book. For some reason in second or third grade, I thought it would be cool to order an entire joke book about pickles. And so after a while, the punchline got to be quite obvious. But I led with that one. What's green and has four doors? A 4-door pickle. Haha. They laughed at me. I don't know why I even thought that fun. I was holding my side laughing. Thought that was the funniest thing ever. Anyway, this is a Jewish joke book, not a pickle joke book. So probably much more sharp and intellectual than my pickle joke book back in the long time ago. Yeah. Why do I remember that joke? I remember the 4-door pickle joke. I really do. I don't know why I remember that. I got to use that on my. That's the worst dad joke ever. My son's coming home from college for a couple of days next week. I'm going to tell him what's green and has four doors and see if he guesses. And then I'm going to laugh and tell him it's a 4-door pickle. And then maybe I'll read some Jewish jokes to him as well. I'll do that. He doesn't go to one of those anti-Semitic schools. He goes to a school that believes in inclusivity of all people of all faith and forms. So he's not an Ivy Leaguer. That's what I'm saying. All right, good to have all of you here on the show. What's green in it? Some of you are going to use that today, the water cooler. I know you are. Don't you lie to me. That some of you might have laughed when you saw that. Some of you might have laughed when you saw that. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do this. Let's take a quick break and pay an homage to some of our great sponsors, and then we'll come back. We're going to do meme roulette and prepare our hearts for we're going to prepare our hearts for Mr. Jay Ratliff, our aviation travel expert. Everybody stand by. Lakey's here, and thinking about the 4-door pickle. Anybody else got a good pickle joke? Put it in your comments out there. Love to have you participate in the jokes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Lakey, stand by. More to come. I'll be right back.
1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning is on call 24/7, even on weekends and holidays. We pride ourselves in our on-time guarantees. In addition to installation and repairs, we offer maintenance services. So no matter when you need us, you can always count on 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning to keep your system running. Check out our family of brands for all of your service needs, including electrical and plumbing.
1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning.
How you holding up? Nothing wrong with getting help.
If I promise to look into it, will you drop it and help me build this fence?
Now you need my help.
If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach.
All right, I'm back. I told you to be back. I wasn't going far. I got back. I've had this cough thing going on. I got this. I got my mug. I got my son's little NIL mug. He made money off that because it's College World Japan NIL. And then I've got a Rivers Promise mug. And notice who the sponsor of that one is. Rivers Promise 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning. They handed out mugs at our last golf tournament. By the way, it is a great time. If you saw Corey Clinton there, call him up, get that service maintenance agreement done, maintenance service done. It's where they can help you prevent big breakdowns in the middle of summer, oftentimes saving money. And it's not very much to do a maintenance a trip like that. I do it twice a year, and I'm actually a monthly member, so anytime I ever need them, they're really on call. But they're available 24/7. But I would recommend now's the time of the year. Don't wait for a breakdown. Say, hey, come and check out my air conditioning system. Make sure it's running, operation effective, and you spend a few bucks, and it can save you thousands of dollars later on. So, and if you know that air conditioner is not going to work throughout the entire season, I would recommend 1 Hour Heating and Air. They replace my HVAC systems, and I know people like to shop around and things, but let me tell you, you're going to get warranties, guarantees, peace of mind that you would never get with a lot of other companies. I can testify to that because I'm a customer of theirs, and it's sometimes in the world I say you get kind of what you pay for, and the sad part of that is when you realize you get what you pay for. You know what I'm talking about. So don't call them up, get that quote, get on their maintenance plan, and I think you will thank me as so many of our listeners have. I appreciate you. All right. We do meme roulette here in a second, but a couple of stories I haven't gotten to. But I do have another question. It's kind of a question of the day we'll have fun with. Is there's a story out there. This is a question of the day for all of you. That someone asked the internet, what outdated slang words or terms do people still use? Anybody remember, and I'm not a movie guy, but someone said this reference, Dazed and Confused, Matthew McConaughey's character. And I like Matthew McConaughey. He said, that's what I love about those high school girls, man. I get older, they stay the same age. Well, some of you are like that on your slang. You get older and your slang stays the same. And so they ask, what are the often outdated slang words that you are using out there? And you use them, and you can oftentimes tell people their age by the slang words they use. So I want you to throw up some of the slang words that you use and or slang phrases that you use, and we can probably judge how old you are. For instance, gnarly. That's probably an 80s reference, man. That's gnarly. That's a California surf thing. I'm guessing that is. Stoked. That's now outdated. I'm so stoked for this. That means I'm excited for it. But the slang word was stoked. That was probably 90s, maybe, was it? Now, if you're going back and saying dude, regardless of gender era, they still do that. The kids call their dude. That's more recent. Okie dokie. If you're currently and always and consistently using the slang word okie dokie, what age does that make you? It makes you probably older than me, is what it probably does. Here's another slang phrase. Now we're cooking with gas. Now we're cooking with gas. That's the same. If you're also the bomb, that's the bomb or thebomb.com. Please stop. Please stop. If you're still, that's just a public service announcement. If you're saying that's the bomb or it's thebomb.com, I'm asking you, please stop. Of all these slang words, that's the one that I'm like, stop. Don't ever do that again. You are disgracing humanity and the creation that the Lord has put in front of us. Don't do that ever. The bomb. That's the bomb. No, that's outdated. Just don't do that. Here's another one. Bee's knees. I don't mind that as much. That's the bee's knees. But I think you got to be older than producer Chad and I to say the bee's knees on a regular basis. If you're calling people whippersnappers, that probably means you're an old guy. If you're referring to anybody as your home slice, that's probably an old person as well. If you're saying totes, I mean, totally, that totes, yeah. That's outdated. Stop doing it. You're aging yourself. Does anybody still say the word golly? Golly? Yeah. This one, noise. N-O-I is a version of saying nice. Instead of nice, you go, nice. I got that the other day. I was talking to one of our friends that's going to be volunteering at our casino gala, my brother Benny, and I said, I'm going to also send you some other information. He does a lot of our graphic stuff. And he said, nice. And I'm like, outdated. Jeez Louise. Anybody still say Jeez Louise out there? That shows you're outdated. Yeah. So anyway, let me okay, here's one on the list that someone had sent in. Come on, sweetheart, let's blow this pop stand or this popsicle stand, I think is what I've heard it as. Anyway, if you've got a comment on outdated slang words, you can let us know. Ray says blowing chunks or yakking, meaning vomiting. That's true. That I don't think people say blowing chunks. Puke your guts out, maybe. Sorry, I know some of you are eating breakfast out there. By golly, by gum. Jim jumps in here. By golly, by gum. Yeah, you're really. I haven't heard that phrase in forever, and I've never used it. I don't know. I don't even know the proper use of that. But by golly, by gum. Doggone it. I don't know if doggone it is a slang. It's just a substitute for damn it. But I just say it. I don't need a substitute for that. Anyway, slang words that you're still holding on to out there. Love to hear your slang words that you're still using. Geez Louise, whippersnapper. Smell you later. Remember that? That was like probably 80s, right? In the 80s, 90s. Smell you later. Home slice. I said, oh, here's one that's not on the list. And I think this is outdated. It was fun for about a year or so ago. Maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago. But if you're still saying talk to the hand, speak to the hand, don't do that, please. That era of slang word is over with. Don't say speak to the hand, okay? So here's another way to look at this question. What is the one thing that you say or phrase that you do that causes your kids and grandkids to cringe? Now, I know some of us are going, well, most things that I do cause my kids to cringe. It's just part of the age they're at. But you get the idea. What's the one thing like I say that on, don't say da bomb or dabomb.com. I say, don't do that ever, ever, ever. Please don't do that. And I'm hoping that you don't. But anyway, send us your comments on this. Slang words that you use that you probably should have retired with your high school football jersey. Maybe what outdated slang words do you still use? That is our question of the day. All right, a couple of stories we're going to carry over to tomorrow. Kamala Harris returned to the stage and decided to make a speech, and her word salads and cackling came back, comparing Democrats to elephants. Really weird. She talked about elephants, and this is another video. For some reason, I'm having trouble extracting the videos, and I'll try to get the video of this, but Kamala telling Democrats to be elephants. I'm like, well, that's why you lost the election. A lot of old Democrats turned elephants in this past election, but that's lost on her because she was probably in the vodka bottle before she got up on the stage right there. I had those two big stories, and teeny boppers. Teeny boppers is one. Rich says that is a slang word that's probably over. Yeah, if you're a bunch of teeny boppers. Now, Jim has one. Oofda. Oofda. What does that mean? Delilah, do you know what oofda means? You don't know what oofda means. There's probably an F thing here. Yeah, okay. Somebody's going to explain that one to me. I'm not, and I can't be typing while I'm on television. In radio days, I can look that up in real time. I can't do that on the television show, so I apologize for that. All right, I appreciate that. That's great. That's what I want. These phrases that we're still using. Speak to the hand is the one that came to me out there. All right, we had these two questions earlier that I mentioned on the show about news stories that aren't getting a lot of coverage, and they should. First of all, we'll go back and watch yesterday's cabinet meeting when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Said that the Biden administration had been a vector and a collaborator in child trafficking. He talked about red dyes, he talked about health, he talked about fluoride in water, and then he just threw this in at the very end, and you're like, what? And it ties back to a whistleblower's conversation. Let me put the Breitbart story up. It ties back to a whistleblower conversation regarding what was happening, that Homeland Security was getting the children and then handing them over to HHS, and HHS was distributing these children all around America. And that's what whistleblower told. The media doesn't cover this stuff, but this is a whistleblower testified under the threat of perjury in front of Congress back in October, I think, before the election, and said, yeah, that's why they're missing 300,000 children through DHS, Homeland Security, and HHS, because they had 300,000 unaccompanied minors that were passed away from DHS over to HHS, and HHS distributed them to sponsoring families or sponsoring something, and now we're missing 300,000. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., in the midst of talking about red dyes and Doritos, throws out this bombshell. He called the Biden administration a vector and collaborator in child trafficking, child sex slavery. It was a pretty big bombshell that's not good, and it was right from his mouth, right in front of the cabinet meeting yesterday. You got to go back and watch this, and this is something that you need to say. 300,000 kids, that's what Robert F. Kennedy said. Yeah, those 300,000 kids were trafficked into our country through 2 government agencies, distributed and dispersed across America, and we're doing our best to now find them. Do you realize what a bombshell that is? Now, this is the phrase that you use. That's the bombshell, not the slang word. I didn't do that one. Anyway, we'll follow up on that one. I also have another story I want to keep till tomorrow. Anybody remember the George Floyd riots? The guys kneeling and women kneeling on the George Floyd riots in support of the protesters, taking knees, Colin Kaepernick style. Those FBI kneelers, they have been reassigned. I'll tell you that story tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring in our aviation and travel expert. His name is Mr. Jay Ratliff, joins us every week at this time. Jay Ratliff, good morning, sir. How are you?
Pleasant good morning. Doing very well today. Thank you.
Very well. I have a question of the day. The question of the day is slang words that you use that probably are outdated, or the other ways to phrase that. Are there things that you say and you still use in your lexicon that your kids or grandkids go, oh, don't say it like that? Do you have any slang words in the Jay Ratliff thing that causes your daughters to cringe?
I think the grandkids can't quite understand cool beans. Hey, that's cool beans. They have no idea what Papa's talking about with that.
I still sometimes will say cool beans now that I think of it. I say, yeah, don't say the bomb, though. That's thebomb.com. Drop that one.
We work around airports. The last word you want to use is the B
true.
word.
Yeah, don't use that one. Don't use that one. Jay Ratliff, aviation travel expert. You can find him at jratliff.com, jratliff.com. Jay, lots of stories to get to, but first, let's talk about what it's like to fly around the country today. Let's go backwards.
Chicago's just kind of a mess. Minneapolis is as well. The central part of the country, north, is just problematic with a lot of bad weather that's causing flight delays and cancellations. Unfortunately, those are two big airports, and a lot of aircraft are routed through both of those. So you may be flying from Denver to the West Coast and think, hey, I'm good, only to find out your airplane's delayed significantly because it was routed through that mess in Chicago. Anything south looks to be good out west. It's just Chicago, maybe Detroit, and certainly Minneapolis that are going to be the issues. And I would suspect Chicago is going to catch the brunt of it. As the day progresses, it's going to get better in Chicago. But the residual effect, as you know so well, once the mess is created, it takes quite a while for it to kind of flush itself out.
It's the accordion effect is what happens there.
That's it.
Earlier this year, we had that horrible crash around Washington Reagan Airport. The Black Hawk hit the D.C. plane. The ice skating team flying up, they had Olympic hopes of flying in from Wichita. They all died. It was a horrible crash, and of course, it has to be investigated. And it looks like there's maybe an update on this investigation.
Yeah, again, the final report, I don't think, is going to be out to maybe 8 months, but we're getting additional details as things progress. And the latest one was the fact that moments before the impact of the two aircraft, air traffic control requested a slight course correction on behalf of the Army Black Hawk helicopter. The pilot in command, she acknowledged that, but did not make a course correction of any kind. The warrant officer, who was the flight instructor sitting alongside her, repeated what he heard air traffic control say. She also acknowledged that, but apparently didn't make any change in the direction of that Black Hawk helicopter. And it was, I think, 13 or 16 seconds later, the impact took place. And apparently, up until the very last second, the crew of the helicopter clueless about the aircraft being in that vicinity. Now, multiple times, air traffic controllers constantly stated, the regional jet on final, the regional jet on final. Do you have visual? And they continue to say yes. Now, these airplanes were stacked up, if you will, on the approach, and apparently they were looking at the one behind it, not the one that was the closest to it. And of course, if they're on those night goggles, you have a very limited peripheral vision. Yep. So it just, again, I'm certain there's going to be multiple causes attributed to this horrific crash. But one, why was the helicopter at close to 300 feet when it was only supposed to be 200 feet and below? And why were some of these commands not being followed? And of course, some people are saying that the urgency in the voice of the air traffic controller wasn't enough to send the message, you need to do something fast. But I disagree, because I think air traffic control constantly stated, keep an eye out for the traffic in the area. And for whatever the reason, not one, not two, but three people inside that helicopter didn't see it until the last minute. We've talked about the American Eagle regional jet. They did see the helicopter at the last moment. They were trying to take off quickly as far as elevate and go to a higher altitude, but they were unable to do so. And obviously a regional jet's not built for evasive maneuvers. The Black Hawk helicopter is, and sadly we lost those lives. And we're seeing changes in that area as far as the flight patterns of helicopters. Should have been done long before the crash, but we're also seeing some changes to tourist helicopters in the New York area, Las Vegas, and other airports to make sure that the flight activity close proximity to a commercial airport is seeing some changes, so that we put a little bit more distance between the helicopters and the arriving and departing aircraft, which is certainly, I think, is a good thing.
The voice of Jay Ratliff, if you're listening later in the day on the podcast version of the show, not the live show, that's the voice of Jay Ratliff, aviation and travel expert. Jay, you have a Lufthansa story I want to get to, but yesterday was a big day in Colorado. I think it was yesterday. Yesterday was a big day in Colorado because the Lufthansa flew their very first into Colorado, their A380, which is a double-decker aircraft. I've not been in one of these, but I want to take a Lufthansa flight, and it's now flying daily or several times a week out of Denver.
That's great. In fact, they flew the A380 into Cincinnati, and I was invited by Airbus to take a tour of it. It wasn't completely done. Some of the panels still exposed. They didn't have any seats in it. But you talk about a massive airplane that can seat, if it's all coach, I think 880 people. I think that's tempting fate, but that's how many you could cram onto that bad boy. But of course, it's 4 engines, and 4 engines sucks up a lot of fuel. And that's why some people are saying I'd rather have a 2 engine wide body that maybe only holds 400, so that it would be a little bit cheaper to operate. But those A380s, and there's a lot of them out there operating, are just magnificent aircraft to look at. But yeah, Lufthansa was taking a flight, I think it was from the West Coast to Munich, and during the course of the flight there was a tablet or some sort of electronic device that got wedged in a seat in business class. They couldn't get it out. So they were worried about the lithium batteries that I've talked about so many times before that tend to overheat. Now, if a phone or electronic device catches on fire on a plane, you can't throw it out the window. You can't land fast enough because you're afraid the fire is going to spread. Flight crews have fire suppression bags, or other equipment on board that they can put the device in and try to prevent the fire from spreading, putting it out. When it's wedged, if there's a fire, you can't do anything. So that's one of the reasons that they diverted, as they did to Boston. It was not an emergency landing. They landed, and they had the mechanics come out, take care of it, and remove it. And that's why when we fly, flight attendants will say, if you lose a phone in your seat, don't try to get it yourself. Let us help. And the reason being is sometimes we, as passengers, not knowing how those seats are designed, can actually wedge it in a way that we can't get it out. We also had this week earlier, I think it was a Hawaiian Airlines flight, Honolulu to Tokyo. We had a situation where a phone became wedged as well, and they had to declare an emergency, went into land in Tokyo, which is where they were headed, because that phone got stuck and started to emit an odor, some sort of a smell that indicated it might be overheating. There's a lot of videos on YouTube of these types of devices catching on fire in people's backpacks and their pockets.
Wow.
And it's a very quick progression from the time that they smoke to the time they catch on fire. And we're obviously very concerned about any sort of a fire on board an aircraft that's in flight, which is one of the reasons that we're constantly seeing not only the stories, but the precautions that airlines are taking to try to counter the ongoing threat, the increasing threat that seems to be going on with these particular devices. It's also why when we fly at the gate, you hear them constantly say, we'll take your bag and check it for you at the gate. And they ask the people on the, as they do you have any electronic devices in here? And, a lot of people say no, and they forget they've got a laptop, or they've got an electronic toothbrush or something else that might be powered by lithium batteries. And I'm telling you, I think that's one of the biggest threats right now to commercial aviation is this fire threat we have. And we can't ban phones, can't ban tablets. So we'll see where it goes.
Jay, one more quick little story. The panic mode happening in a lot of airports. There's signs everywhere. The last few weeks I've been traveling. Real ID is going to happen. This is only in the government would you put a mandate out 20-something years ago after the research on 9/11 and say, we need a better ID form and all the, and 20 years later, the Trump administration has finally said, no more delays. Let's get this done. Should people panic?
Oh, no. I mean, and it really wasn't the government's fault. They said in 2005, look, we don't want the TSA officers to be experts on 50 different plus driver's license. We want it one, so they standardized it. It was a great idea. It made things safer. It made it harder to forge a credential to board a commercial flight. And states across the country were given 10 years to get their act together. Well, like a lot of people that have homework to be done, you wait to the last minute, and many of the states in 2015 weren't ready. So the government reluctantly postponed it, and it got postponed twice to 2020. Of course, we know what was going on then, and the pandemic caused it to be moved even more. And now, after 20 years, the Real ID Act is going to come into play next week. What's that, Tuesday or Wednesday? Wednesday the 7th. And the TSA is telling us 20, maybe 25% of travelers aren't prepared. They don't have what they need.
Yeah.
If you've not flown in a while, TSA.gov, check out all the acceptable forms of identification. If you got a valid passport, you can use it. If you don't, you can still go to the post office or the driver's license bureau and get the process moving and get the piece of paper that shows you've got the real ID coming in the mail to you, and you can work with the TSA. But get there extra early if you don't have what you need. TSA is going to try to work with us to get us through.
Yeah.
But excuse me, real quick, I was going to say, I'm glad that the government rolled this out in May early, because it's one of the slowest travel months of the year. Thank goodness they didn't say, let's roll this out the week of Thanksgiving, because that would have been a nightmare. So it's going to be a headache. We're going to see a lot of posted social media stories, but we're moving in the right direction, and I'm glad it's finally being implemented.
20 years later, that's crazy. I know in Colorado, if you've gotten a new driver's license in the last 4 or 5 years, it is a real ID. I mean, every state's handle this differently. So you can call your own motor vehicle association, see if when you got your license, that would tell you a lot. So,
and you can Google the image for your state to see what it looks like compared to what you have. And then you'll know if you're okay or if you're not. And even if you're flying next week, don't think, well, I've got it, I don't need to show up extra early. Show up extra early. There's going to be some people who don't, and it's going to slow down the process considerably. And you don't want to miss your flight that you've been planning for the last 7 months by playing, let's see how close we can cut it getting to the airport.
Yeah. Jay Ratliff, always a pleasure. Aviation travel expert. God bless you, my friend. We will talk to you very, very soon. Appreciate you hopping in here this morning. And he's going to go back to the world of day trading. JRatliff.com is his website. JRatliff.com. RATLAFF. You go to his website, you will see day trading, but he's America's voice for not just watching the market, but also a lot of stations. He does media and traffic reports and been with me for a long time, since the old radio days. Glad he comes on this show. Ladies and gentlemen, before I stop the music, I want to talk about Sherry Cree real quick, and then we're going to wrap it up. Sherry is fantastic. I can't tell you enough about Sherry Cree. I was reading a couple of posts a couple of weeks ago of just how people call her out of like 5, 6, 7 years later, and they say, hey, we want to list our house again. And remember us? You sold our house. She goes into it, and it, she's just grateful when it doesn't. When she gets people to say, no, you're the realtor for life. You're the realtor. Hey, my parents used you, and now I'm going to use you to buy my first home. Homeswithsherry.com. Listen, now is a fantastic type of year. I was driving with producer Chad down to the car yesterday and drove through down one street, and he see a bunch of signs. He said, wow, there's a lot of homes for sale in that neighborhood. This is the time of year a lot of people start listing into the school year, can transfer the kids easy. And so you've got some caveats out there. You got some real caveats you need to fight through. You need to make sure that if you're selling your home, that your home stands out. It's priced appropriately, because there's a lot of competition, but you also want to get the best deal. There's some ways you want to be competitive now that the inventory has started to go up. There's also ways that you want to be able to get first dibs on homes, because in Colorado for years we've had bidding wars that go on. Now it's changed a little bit with interest rates, but listen, the point is there's some strategy that goes into buying or selling a home, especially this time of year. Some of the caveats change. You need to talk with Sherry Cree, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com, friend of the program, and she will walk you through the process. Her goal again is to become your realtor for life, and I think you'll see the type of service that she lends and that she offers is just fantastic. Homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. Talk to her, even if you're not quite sure this is the year you want to sell. Maybe you want to talk to her and get some expert opinions, even on how will the market change if the interest rates continue to go down? How is that going to work out? again, it's not just about calling you to have a listing appointment. It can just be some conversation, and then you figure out what's best. She's willing to and would love to walk through that process with you and have conversations for strategy reasons. HomesWithSherry.com, HomesWithSherry.com. Go to the website, again, anywhere from that I-25 corridor from Denver to Fort Collins, Windsor, Wellington, Fort Lupton, Dacono, Greeley, Broomfield, Boulder, Parker, Colorado, Aurora to Colorado. You get the idea. She can help you. Littleton, Lakewood, she'd love to help you there as well. Loveland, don't forget Loveland. Yeah, don't forget Berthoud. She loves Berthoud. HomesWithSherry.com, HomesWithSherry.com. Be sure to mention Jimmy Lakey. All right, I got to go because we're over time a little bit. We have to get out of here with some other activities here. So we'll save the meme roulette for tomorrow. And we'll have some extra memes for you tomorrow on the Friday edition of the show. Don't forget, if you would like me to brag about your business, info@jimmylakey.com. Send me an email. And also, don't forget, register. We're going to go up. I'm going to push it again tomorrow. The price is going to go up on the Casino Gala and supporting Rivers Promise. Register today, riverspromise.org, riverspromise.com. Ladies and gentlemen, may God bless you. May God bless America. And maybe this is an outdated slang word, as our question of the day said, but peace, or peace be unto you. I'm out of here. See you tomorrow.